Hey, thank you all so much for joining another episode of Celeste the Therapist podcast. My name is Celeste. I'm a therapist from Boston. I'm going to have my guest introduce herself to you all.
Hi, everyone. I'm Farah Harris. I'm also a therapist, but I'm located in the Chicagoland area.
Oh, Chicago Bears. Okay, I don't know. A lot of people were you ever in Boston?
No,
Oh, a lot
I
of
have
people.
family in Boston, though.
Oh, okay. I just assumed you were from here. Okay, so
No.
Chicago. Okay. So one of the things that caught my attention, a lot of people I follow from Boston shared your new book that came out, The Color of Emotional Intelligence. And I wanted to have you on to kind of talk about the work. But what we do on this podcast, before we get into what you're doing, I love to learn about my guests just because I think it's important for people to know things don't just come out like the color of emotional intelligence didn't just like pop out. Like there was this journey. So I would love to hear about how you got into the mental health world to begin with, especially being from Haiti, right? Like
Yeah.
therapy is not the ideal career path. I'm assuming it's nursing, doctor, lawyer.
You got the
Did I name
trifecta.
them all three?
Yep, that's right.
Okay, so but you
Oh,
took a
an engineer.
engineer, yeah. You took a different path and you're excelling in it amazingly, but I would love to hear the journey to that part.
Yeah. So I often say that I consider God like the chief recycler. And so he recycles everything. So my journey was very, I guess you can say, organic in a way. So I actually went to college thinking I was going to be the real life Claire Huxtable. So for all y'all who grew up in the 80s, y'all know that Claire Huxtable was a corporate attorney, and I thought she was bad. And I was like, ooh, I'm going to be her. I'm going to go to school and I'm going to be a corporate attorney. And my mom was like, oh yeah, you'd be an amazing lawyer. Um, I'm also a creative. So my friends who knew me were shocked that I was going into business. They really thought I was going to go into like the creative arts or something like that. And I was like, nah, I'm going to be this boss lady. Yeah, I took my first pre-law class and was like, hell to the no, no, no. This ain't it.
What happened? What happened? It was too structured. It was
It
too
wasn't that it was
uh,
too structured. It was boring. And
okay.
so for me, it was boring for me. And um I may have to like piggyback in my story. So like pause here and fast forward to a year ago, I received my late diagnosis of ADHD. And so now things are making sense in hindsight that for your viewers and listeners, those of us who are neurodivergent, specifically ADHD, like we have very interest driven minds. And so if something's not interesting, it can be very complicated for us to like learn it or to just engage in it. So rewind the tape back to school. I'm like, yo, I thought this would be interesting. It's not, it's hard and I'm struggling and I do not want to do 3 years of undergrad and then another 3 years of law school doing something that's not
Well,
interesting.
what
Yeah.
made you have the strength to because obviously, I mean, people may not know this, but women are late diagnosed with ADHD. Unfortunately, more studies have been on boys. But for you to like take the first class and like make that connection, what was it that gave you the strength? Because you would have to tell your parents too, right? Like that this is what how did you do that?
Well, though I didn't completely shift, like I still went and stayed in the college, school of business or liberal arts, but in under a business degree. I got my degree in economics. So it wasn't like, oh, you're not going to be a lawyer anymore. Poo, poo, poo. We're so sad. It was like, oh, well, you're still going to be in business. Right. And I would say that though I come from a Haitian background, my parents are Haitian parents, they're atypical Haitian parents. So there wasn't, you have to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, nurse. It was, we want you to be happy
Oh,
and we
that's
want you to be
good.
successful. So I
Mm.
had well balanced emotionally. They weren't always highly emotionally intelligent, but in terms of, there was no question for my brother, sister, and I that we were good doing whatever we wanted, as long as we got an education, as long as we were good citizens, to wherever we were living, and that we weren't bringing any stress to them, right? That we were able to take care of ourselves and enough to, quote unquote, leave the nest and not have my parents worry. Oh my gosh, how is she going to be able to survive? How is he going to survive? Will we have to continue to work, to take care of our kids?
Right.
There was none of that. It was just like, are you good at it? Does it make you happy?
Yeah.
Are you fine? Okay, well then that's all that matters. And
Yeah.
I know that's not everybody's story. That comes
Right.
from my background. So when I told him I was going to do law, but I was going to stay in business, it was like, okay, that's fine. You're a smart kid. Do what you need to do. But I wasn't happy with that degree. And unfortunately, I graduated. Y'all can do the math. I graduated in 2001. And 2001, 9/11 happened. So it was very challenging to find work after 9/11. So I took the time to entertain the arts. And so I went back to school, but for fashion design. And I was like, let's play with my right side of the brain and see if this is what I want to do. And I realized, nope, that's not it either. And I stayed in the school, shifted my program. Again, you see, there's like these little slight pivots that I keep moving. And I said, I still want to do something creative, but I feel like I'm not using enough of my left brain. Let me do marketing, where you need to kind of have the business smarts, but also the creative. And so I got my second bachelor's in marketing, and that's how I got my first corporate job, working with a boutique-sized consulting firm. And that was great until it wasn't. Quickly got bored. It was a very flat organization, so there wasn't a lot of room for career growth. And I was laid off. And for that year of being laid off, I just kind of sought the Lord and was like, okay, what are my next steps? What is it that I'm supposed to do? And I felt led to what I thought was marriage and family therapy, because people would come to me for insight, advice, or whatever about like relationships. And I was like, oh, maybe
Why?
that's what I
Why
want
was
to
it
do.
coming to you? Was it you had a listening ear? Because you.
I've always been, regardless of my age, the um, the person in my community, and when I talk about community, I'm talking about like friendships,
Yeah.
where people are like, you seem to have a good head on your shoulders. You seem to have common sense. You have a level of wisdom. If something's going on, usually my friends would come to me and be like, what are your thoughts? How do you think I should handle this? And when it came to relationships, I think they saw the same thing. It was just like, you seem to
Okay.
be level-headed when it comes to the conflicts that can happen in
Mhm.
between, partners. And I was like, man, if I can help people before you even put a ring on it, like I want to do premarital work,
Mhm.
so that you don't waste your time realizing that y'all are not aligned. You wasted all this
Right.
money on a wedding and you're going to waste way more money on a divorce. Like,
Yeah.
let's just get this clear now. And little did I know that it wasn't that I was supposed to do marriage and family therapy, because I cannot stand working with couples.
Me neither. When
They're
I
work.
no, I love talking about relationships. I love educating people about relationships. But when I started doing couples therapy and I realized, oh my gosh, you got to hold two emotions and all, I was like, I don't do couples therapy anymore. I admire people that do. I think there's a special place for them because we need them.
You you and I are the same. You and I are the same. Because I'm like, I can give you some sound advice, but I will not want to work with you, because my thing is that I get really excited about the individual story. Somebody will say something in a session. I'm like, oh, let's talk about that. Let's go back and see what that means. And that's not what you're supposed to do as a couples therapist. So for those who aren't familiar with the work, the relationship is the client. And so everything has to go back to the relationship. And I go, no, I want to deal with the individual in the relationship. So once that became clear to me, and it's not that I had even bad clients even in my, what do you call that? What do we do? Our internship. So even when I was having couple clients as an intern, I realized, no, this ain't it, but this is the right field. Like I knew I needed to be in the mental health space. So it wasn't an issue of, oh man, you got the wrong degree. No, I got the right master's. And that's what I had to tell my parents, because they wanted me to get a graduate degree right after college. And I was like, I don't even like my undergrad. Why am I going to spend money on something that I don't even know what I want to be a master of? So I actually needed that space and time to try fashion design, to go into marketing, to then get to a place of like, okay, this mental health field, every course that I'm taking is exciting me.
Wow.
Everything that we're learning, well, besides the research part, I hated that class. I was like, oh, we're doing stats. I don't want to do this. But it was it just made me feel at ease. Like the minute I walked on campus and took my first graduate course, I was like, this is what I want to do. But I did not want to be a private practice clinician. Mm-hmm. I was like, I'll work with somebody else. I have them deal with it, deal with mm-hmm. billing, all the stuff, just show up and be a great therapist. And God, what's the saying? You make your plans and God laughs at them. So I ended up having my own private practice. I say that I was a reluctant entrepreneur. People were just kind of seeking me out. And yeah, I started probably around 2015.
Same time I started. That is insane. And I was a reluctant, my supervisor, a Black lady, convinced me to go into it. I was like, what am I going to do that for? I get sick in vacation time. It don't make no sense to be trying to do this. 2015, I started. That's wild that you just gave that year.
You and I
that is crazy. I was not.
Thank you.
I did not want to be an entrepreneur, like at all. Like I admire people that have their stuff planned out. When I be working with them, I'd be like, come on, let's get it together. Cause I ain't have that. I was just going with the motion.
But I mean, seriously, for us who are in this entrepreneurial space, it's crazy. It's wild out here. Like I don't necessarily recommend it. But yeah, you and I had the same thinking about, wait, there's in a way comfort and protection when you work for somebody else. I mean, yes, at any time they can lay you off, but that aside, mm-hmm. You have a set salary. Yeah. You have to not have to deal with the admin stuff about worrying about the lights. You don't have to worry about getting furniture. You just walk into the space and just go like, let me use my gifts and then go back home.
Yeah, that's it.
Mind my business. And so to become an independent entrepreneur, it's like, oh, wait, now where do I see clients? How many clients do I need so that I can actually have a salary? What do I...
And remember back then in 2015, therapy wasn't popping like it is now. So it was completely different.
Completely different. And so that I know that was a long story to get me to just 2015, but I even at that time went, though I'm going to be a private practice clinician, I know that there's something beyond the couch. I know that I still want to do work in the corporate space. My husband has over 2 decades in the corporate space. My closest friends are in corporate. My clients that I was seeing were professional, men and women, predominantly Black men and women who were in the corporate space. And of course, they were bringing in stuff that had to do with work. So when people are coming to therapy, there may be personal relationship stuff that they were talking about, or maybe some childhood trauma. But oftentimes we were talking about work. And I was like, man, we really don't do work in the US well. We don't care for our people well. There isn't this healthy balance between work and living. And I was like, man, if there's a way that I could bring this awareness of, hey, the folks that work for you are also just having regular life experiences. They're going through divorce. They're going through breakups and miscarriages. They're going through parents dealing with dementia. They're going through life, and it's going to impact how they show up at work. And if y'all are a toxic work environment, that's going to spill into how they parent, how they communicate with their girlfriends, how they show up with their partners. And I was seeing this intersection, and I was like, okay, is there a way for me to get in here? Is there a possibility for me to find space to address
Yeah.
the issue and to highlight how we can improve the workplace so that we can improve the way that we live?
Yeah, no. So the story getting to 2015, even though it was long, it's important, right? Because for me, it wasn't until I got into private practice I realized people struggle with change, or they feel like it's not like, dang, I messed up. Kind of, you went to fashion, you went to all these things, but you was going. And I think it's important for people to hear, like, that happens. Like, sometimes you don't know until you put one foot in front of the other. Like, is this going to work? Right? People, the fear of change stops people from creates people staying in the same position that they're in. So, like, your story, like the different peaks and valleys, it's important for people to hear. I think it's a really great message.
I think I was able to do it two reasons. One, I gave myself permission to say this
Yeah.
doesn't work, but
Yeah.
I also had the privilege of having parents who
I'll
supported
support it.
me
Yeah.
shifting. I think a lot of people stay where they are even when they want to go because they think they're going to disappoint,
Yeah.
whoever their loved ones, their friends, their
Yeah.
partner. It's hard to say. Like, I mean, it was a challenging season between my husband and I. We were early in our marriage, and
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I got laid off. Unemployment is only so much.
Hmm.
Um, and I was shocked that he told me, because I was going on like informational interviews, like trying to shadow people so that I can see if this is, where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. And I remember Michael was like, how about you just like sit down and pray and seek God on this so that we don't end up being in the same place in a couple of years,
Mm.
AKA finding a job that we think is a fit and then
Mhm.
getting bored or frustrated and then having to find another career.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so he doesn't remember telling me this. I was like, that was the Holy Spirit. But I was like, no, I clearly remember you telling me this because that's when I felt this ease and this release to just fall back. Like, okay,
Wow.
let me not stress out about this. Let me just be still and
Yeah.
see what the next thing is going to be. I mean, it took a year, but once the not the highlight, the light bulb went off in my mind on, I think you're going to go get a graduate degree in mental health counseling. I've never
And
looked back.
and without, so I have a quote on my board. It says, "Be still and know that I am God." And one of the things that I think is important, and I'm always like talking to people about, is like the power in stillness. And there's so many things, especially in 2023, where we can be distracted by. Some of it is intentional. And
Mm,
if we're not taking time to be still, we'll never know where we're going or how we're going to get there. Right. For some people, it may be a week, 2 weeks, a month. For you, it was a year. But I tell people, once you start to be intentional about like searching and seeking, the answers will come. Like, I just believe that, because it wasn't that somebody sat and told me about stillness. It's like, when I
mm.
went into private practice, it forced me into stillness, because I don't have the coworkers. I'm in this office seeing clients, and in between sessions, I don't have nobody to check in with. That was like the beginning part of my journey of like seeing how powerful it was. Hard at first, don't get me wrong. If you're not used to stillness, it feels hard, right? But once you get over that hump and start to really feed your spirit, you'll get the answers. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
100%. I'm sitting here trying not to clap into the microphone, but I'm like, yes, all that. I'll send you an offering. I'm glad that you even said that it's not easy,
It's
because
not.
I think you go like, oh, just be quiet, just be still. We have so many distractions. We got our phones, we got
Yeah.
our, if we have kids, we have our
Yeah.
partners, we have our friends. We can find ways to make ourselves distracted because we don't want to sit still, because it's like,
100%.
what will I hear?
Hmm.
What will become real to me? What is the
Hmm.
evidence of what's going on? And not all of us, and both of us are therapists, so we know that we
Yeah.
kind of got comfortable even creating stillness and silence with our
Hmm.
clients. We'll
Hmm.
throw out that hard question and just be like, I'm going to say
Before I
nothing.
would even when I first started private practice, it was hard for me to be still, like, and sit with the
Them.
hard stuff, like. And then I had to like bite my tongue and be like, you know what, Celeste? I had a client. He was a therapist, and he said, Celeste, every time we're at the end of the session and something's hard, I feel like you try to like make it better. You don't have to do that. And I was
Mm,
like, dang, thank God for that like
mhm.
message, because it forced me to see like sometimes things are hard and it's nothing I can do about it, but just be a listening ear. But I was trying to wrap it up in a package and he was like, you don't have to do that. I was like, you're right. Oh my
He's like,
gosh.
I'm gonna leave with my stuff.
Yeah.
I'm gonna process my stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, that being still was, that's not saying that it was a fun year. It was a
Yeah.
very interesting year. And um the what I meditated on was, seek first his kingdom. And I was like, okay, if you're the creator, God, you created me, you already know what the end is going to be. And I just need
Yeah.
to be quiet. And you
Yeah.
just tell me what my next step is, because I don't have a relationship. There are some people who, God reveals this big picture. They see this
Right.
vision.
Right.
Yeah, that ain't me. It's
Yeah.
literally, like I said, and you kind of experienced it too, as a reluctant entrepreneur, I'm also a reluctant leader. I'm reluctant in a lot of the things that I do, but I am obedient.
Yeah.
Like when I can sense this is what you're supposed to say yes to, I may not want to, but
Yeah.
I will
Yeah.
do it because
For-
I know that obedience is better.
Well, the obedience and for me, the anxiety, like I say, I can't sit with something in my spirit because I lose sleep. Like I feel like if I don't start executing. And so,
Right.
but unfortunately, some people get used to that discomfort of not doing the thing that they're being led to do. And I
Mm,
haven't gotten comfortable with that. So
mm-mm.
when people see the things that I do, I say I do it. And there's a lot of emotions, the same emotions we're talking about in our sessions. I'm going through them, but I'm putting the goal and the faith in mind, right? Because we can either go by faith or fear. Both are the unknown, but the fear is
Mm.
harder. And the fear, I feel like people end up with regret when they lead by fear and not faith, you know?
Girl, just dropping gems.
Okay.
Good. That is good because
Yeah.
I don't think I've heard anyone say that faith and fear are both the unknown.
Yeah.
We have the choice.
We
Like, are
have
we
the
going to go
choice.
chase the fear or are we going to chase the faith?
Yeah.
That is good. Now you guys, okay, I'm going to be meditating on that after our conversation. That was good.
Okay.
That was good.
So you got these friends in corporate, your husband's in corporate, your clients are in corporate. Because it's interesting because you're in the corporate world, but you don't have like much besides the boutique, not really. And I think about Black and brown people and how we are survivors and how even the stillness, like when I started working from home, I remember I had to force myself to close my computer on Friday. Like, I'm like, okay, like not working felt hard, right?
Mm.
And the way that we have been conditioned in our society to like prove ourselves. Do you think that plays a role in the struggles too in the corporate world as you've been working with people?
Oh, 100%. I feel like there's for those of us who are part of the global majority, there's this expectation, there's this narrative that we have to do more to
Yeah.
prove our existence. I don't
Mhm.
believe in that. I don't subscribe to that narrative, but
Mhm.
I'm aware of the
Right.
narrative.
Right.
And so it's like, oh, I got to work harder. I got to get another degree. I got to get credentialed in this. I need to be the loudest at the table. I need to get in early, stay late, like do all these things that are actually not really beneficial to our well-being because we believe this is how we're going to climb the corporate ladder or, do whatever it is. Because to me, success is subjective. Some people are like, I don't want the title. I just want to be able to maintain this job to pay these bills and, uh, afford the life that I want to have. And then there's other people that really it is about how they're seen, right? So it's like they love that title. They love what it looks like to throw doctor in front of their name or whatever it is. And we have this very unhealthy relationship to work that so many of us struggle to let's separate our identity from our role. And that could even go, I know we're talking about corporate, but especially when I've worked with women, a saying that I have is you loan your roles, but you own yourself. Like that mother, that's a, yeah, you are somebody's mom forever, but you're not the same mom. Like who you are as a mom to an infant is not the same to a teenager, to the same, or is it the same to a child who has passed away and is no longer living with you? Like you're loaning this role, but it cannot be your end all, because when they leave, whether they leave to college, whether they leave to because they got married or they move out of state or they have passed on, if you're so attached to that identity as a mother, when they leave, you don't know what to do with yourself. It's the same thing when people retire from a job and then quickly
That's so
die
true. Yeah.
after they've retired because they felt like, well, my life was my job.
Yeah.
Everything that I am is this identity. And so we have to be so careful to not affix our being to our doing, because then we're not going to be able to live well. And so for my Black folks, I really want there to be an understanding of, okay, what I do should be aligned with however I want to live, whether it's I'm working for a company that's aligned with my values, or I'm in a career that affords the life that I want to live,
Right.
meaning if I value travel, if I value new adventures and experiences, it affords me that. I don't care if that's being a custodian or, being
Right.
in the C-suite. If it's doing what I needed to do for my life, then it's aligned. But I feel like we're so misaligned because it's all about this being booked and busy, grinding,
Right.
hustling,
Right.
all this other stuff that just sounds harsh.
Well, Farah, I think you said something earlier
Yeah.
about depending on what success looks like for you, and I think that's a great start for people. Because I never wanted to. I remember I worked at a shelter when I was 19, and I was like, I just want to make money to get them a day pro. Like I wanted to do. I never wanted to be on screen. Even when I had my practice, I didn't even put my picture up because I was like, it's not about me, it's about what I'm doing, and I just I was very reluctant. People would never know that. But my point that I wanted to make in regards to success, because you said making sure things are aligned with your values, but I think because we're not being still, we're looking at success the way society deems success, right? Like we're not looking at what works for us. For me, peace, I tell people all the time, we'll climb this ladder and make this money, but internally it's not moving. And I said, who wants all of this if they can't have this? But society says if you have that, that's the end all. But you go to third world countries, they're smiling, running around happy with not half the things we have. I remember going to Guatemala and our driver brought us to his house and his wife made dinner. They were sleeping on a mattress, one room, but they were so happy, and that joy, you could feel the energy and joy. And it's because we really have to look at what success looks like for us so that we can work on aligning ourselves. Does that make sense?
It makes 100% 100% sense. Because when we're okay with us, because we're not trying to fight and compete and be with everybody else, and I don't want to necessarily go down the rabbit hole of capitalism, but
Right.
You go to where they call a third world country, because quite honestly, these divided states is a third world country with a Gucci belt. But
you're
they
so
don't tell
right.
you otherwise. I'm like,
You're
this is the
so
reason
right.
why. Don't look behind the curtain. It's ghetto.
Well, they're starting to see it now. People be like, what's going on in America?
We on a no-fly list. We don't. Other countries don't necessarily want folks from here at all,
exactly.
and they don't want to come here. It's craziness. But I remember even saying to my husband, and we both agree to this, though we have, we're doing our investments for retirement, doing our investments for our children if they choose to go to college. But we already realize college is a joke. Unless you are planning on being a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, you leave with debt.
Yep. Me and my husband said the same thing. We were like, if they want to end up in a trade, we're for it. Yep.
100%.
It worked out for me because I ended up going in the career path. I say that to people all the time. But the fact that you can get a $50,000 student loan but can't get a $10,000 business loan, it says a lot. Like the math ain't math. And when you start, and when we were growing up, if you want to be something, you got to get a degree. That's the message that we were heard. We didn't hear. That's why the trades don't have a lot of people, because we were pushed into this degree. Now we can't even afford if we wanted to switch careers.
Celeste, we ain't got time. We ain't got time because this is what people aren't really taking the time to assess. Our parents' generation lived in a whole different type of society where college was affordable. Because I hate when people are trying to poo-poo on Gen Z and young millennials claiming like they don't want to work. They have to work. They have loans. They need a job. The loans that they have are like insurmountable compared to what you even considered back in the 1960s, 70s, and even the 80s. Like I went to U of I, the University of Illinois, Champaign. I think when I went my freshman year, in-state cost was probably around 11 to 12,000 a year. It's, I think, triple or quadruple that for in-state. And it's 20 years later.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. Who can live like that? Who can afford that? And then you get a degree. I have a high school classmate who's an attorney, but I believe she's in the space where she's working with like immigration law. They don't make that much money. So she had loans up to around maybe $250,000.
Dang.
So here you are saying you want us to contribute to the society, but we already in a deficit, but you want us to give. Like, it doesn't make any sense. So this is why people are grinding and hustling and try to figure out all the things, because there's no space to be still and be happy when you're broke.
Yeah.
In this type of country.
Yeah.
I mean, I told Mike, I was like, yo, if we leave the United States, divided states, whatever, and go someplace else, I am completely content with our children, like working at a hotel.
Yep.
Seeing the beach every day.
Yep.
Having access to fresh fruits and vegetables. And be content in life. And, give all the glory to God. I would be fine with that. They do not need to have any extra degrees, labels to their name if what they're producing is actually beneficial to the greater good, that they're kind, they're happy, they have successful relationships. I don't understand why we're doing all this extra work for what.
Dang, you're right. Ooh, got chills. I've never heard divided states. That's so funny. We are not the United States.
No, we get to be united.
So I see your path, right? And then because you were already a reluctant entrepreneur, you probably was a reluctant author too.
Go ahead and laugh at me because I'm laughing at myself.
I know. So what made you pull the trigger? Because we have such similar ways that, people see us out here, but they don't know everything was by faith, because it wasn't because we seen a vision.
No, I tell folks all the time, this book was not a labor of love. This was an act of obedience. Straight up. So what happened was back in 2020, I think it was the summer of 2020, I get an email from a company that I'll leave nameless. Fortune 500 company, but wasn't making any real income because let's just say that their way of making money was having live events, and nothing was live in 2020. And they were like, yo, can you come and speak to our Black employees? We got your name. I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Joy Bradford, who her book came out, Sisterhood Heals, I want to say is her title. Yeah. So she had recommended me. Thank you, Dr. Joy.
So came on a podcast before a couple years ago. Yeah. I love her.
She's amazing.
Yeah.
And I said, okay. And I understood that people were sitting here trying to create like these healing circles and all this stuff, because this was post George Floyd. I think Elijah McClain had already gotten the news of his murder and all these things. But I'm like, okay, you've brought in these different clinicians, you've brought in these different professors to come talk. What are y'all missing? Like, how many self-care sessions can we do? Like, what? I'm all about impact. So I don't want to come and repeat something,
right,
Dr. such and such said, and, or, this clinician said. And she's like, well, I mean, and she was like struggling to even answer that. And I said, okay, y'all company, I really believe sooner is probably going to be laying off some folks, and folks are probably already dealing with furloughs. Has anybody come to your organization and talked about emotional intelligence? Because it's a very vital skill to deal with change. It helps you to be resilient. It helps you to become agile, with the ebbs and flows. And she was like, no. And I said, well, has anybody, and mind you, Celeste, and you probably have already picked this up in our conversation. I could talk.
Wait, did you have to say that out loud? I didn't know that.
But that's my gifting, is that I can riff, as my husband said. He's like, you're the queen of riffing. Like, somebody asks you a question, bomb, you're gonna have something to say. And I believe this is like an ADHD like skill. And so as I'm talking to her, these ideas are coming to my mind, like, yo, wow. Does your Black employees realize that they're coming up into the workplace using their emotional intelligence differently, that they're using it as survival and not necessarily as self-care, not necessarily to really to enhance performance or productivity or whatever. And she was like, no. And so as I'm talking, I'm like, oh, I like this idea. Like, I've never really talked about this.
Wow, that was your first time saying it out loud?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I be riffing. It just be, it gets downloaded.
Because it's important. What you said is like, dang.
It was so right, because I'm trying, Are you into Marvel? Like, are you into?
I'm familiar with it, but no.
Okay. All right. So any of your friends that listen that happen to like watch Marvel shows, there's a show that came out a couple of years ago called Loki, and it was based off of this one character in the Marvel universe. And in his series, it's all about this timeline. And I'm big on metaphors. So I'm seeing this picture of this timeline. And the whole thing is that these timekeepers are trying to keep the timeline straight. That if any of the other dimensions and universes are doing something that can get things off the timeline, they go to that place and kind of like stop it from happening.
Okay.
And the whole thing was like, by the end, one of his variants doesn't believe this lie that there's this timekeeper and whatever. And she pretty much breaks the timeline. And you see all these other timelines coming from this main one. And I was like, that's the ADHD brain. There's one main convergent thinking, and then we diverge into all these things because we can see everything connecting. So when I was talking to her about needing EQ, my brain is doing these connections of the dots, going like, well, Black folks don't use it the same way. Yeah. We sitting here going like, how do I make sure I don't make white people uncomfortable? So I'm using my social awareness, right? So I'm trying to empathize and minimize any kind of conflict. But while doing so, I'm decreasing or disassociating or minimizing the emotion that's coming up for me after somebody has just disrespected me, racially aggressed me, etc. So they didn't have much money to give me. So she was just like, I'm so sorry. This is all we have. And I'm like, don't say this is a speaker's fee. This is an honorarium. This is like what they, at church. Thank you for coming, baby. Here's a little something for you. I was like, that's how much it was. Mind you, again, Fortune 500 company. And a part of me was like, you should still do this anyway, because you're curious what this training would
look like. Yeah.
So I really did it for myself. Like, I was like, man, y'all could actually keep this money because it's not much. But let me create this talk and see how I feel about it. Wow. And I was really pushing for it to be in mixed company. I was like, I don't think this should be just for your Black employees, because what's the point of me giving them information that maybe I'm giving words that they didn't have language to, but they're still in the place that's harming them.
Yeah.
And I really feel that the people who are harming them intentionally or unintentionally
Right,
need to
right.
be aware that these folks are in here masking and code switching because they've created this environment that's not
Yeah.
safe.
Yeah.
You're like, no, 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 no. We're, again, healing circles.
Yeah.
That's for the Black people. I said, okay. Celeste, everybody in the comment section, I really wish our white colleagues were in this session. I was like, that's what
Dang.
I thought.
Yeah.
And it became one of like my most sought after requests to do it.
Wow.
And in me doing it over and over again, it started to grow in a sense where I wasn't just talking about the Black experience. I was talking about the woman's experience. I was talking about the queer experience. I was talking about the disabled experience, because anybody who's been marginalized
Martin,
or
yep.
othered shows up as this, as I say in the book, a dysfunctional version of themselves to create a functional relationship. Right.
Dang.
And so after, doing it several times, I was like, is this a book? I wonder if this is a book. Well, it would be easy to structure the book because I'll just structure the book the same way that I structure the presentation.
Wow.
So in 2001, I was like, we're going to go ahead and try to put this into a book.
Wow.
Mind you, I was homeschooling our oldest two kids. We still in the hot panini of a pandemic.
I know.
Was I still seeing clients? I'm not sure if I was still seeing clients. And I was sitting here trying to grow a business and then decide, okay, we're gonna write a book. Craziness. Several times I was like, the world don't need this book. I'm good.
Dang.
And one day when I think I did 3 quote unquote writers retreats where I would just go to a hotel for the weekend, just so I didn't have to mother and I could focus. And one weekend it was like really hard. And I was listening to Dr. Miles Monroe. I was like, let me try to just get some stuff to like inspire me. And he was sharing his story about how he got off the stage doing like one of his leadership conferences or whatever. A gentleman came up to him, asked him, "Hell, have you ever thought about writing a book?" And he was like, "Nah." And dude kept on saying, like, "I really think you should write a book." And he kept getting frustrated because he had this mindset, though he's spoken in front of hundreds and thousands of people. He's like, this poor bohemian boy, who would read anything from him? And he said he went home, wrestled with God all night, was like vexed and frustrated that this dude had even requested for him.
Brought it up. I know. You can't unhear it after that.
Right. And then he said, while he's wrestling with God, he heard, you will be a thief if you don't write a book.
Because everything, he has all this stuff in him.
Woo! And he's like, the cemetery is the richest on earth.
Les Brown said that too. Michael Moreau.
And
he talks about him all the time. Yeah.
And I was like, but when he said, I heard God say, you will be a thief, my spirit like broke. I just like wept in that room. And I was like, okay, I surrender. I will finish this book. I don't know what you're going to do with it. Yeah. I don't know how it's going to impact the world, but obviously you want me to write this book. I'm going to finish it. And there are definitely times where I took breaks. I definitely had burnout. Again, one of the reasons why I went to go get evaluated for ADHD was because the book writing process was so challenging. Like writing a book is not easy anyway, but I was like, no, this is harder than I think it should be. And it was because of like hyper focus, burnout, and then there was like some maternal burnout going on too. As I shared, I was homeschooling my kids. Yeah. But I was like, I don't want to write this book out of burnout. I didn't want y'all to get a crispy smoking book. I wanted this book to come out from joy and from ease and the best part of me. So I had to give myself grace and separate myself from writing. I think there was probably 5 months hiatus that I didn't even touch it. I didn't think about it, didn't do nothing. And then came back. I was like, I'm ready to come back to it. And then here we are now. And it is a international best-selling book on Amazon.
I know. If people are watching, you can see the book cover. And I just want to point out really quick, as you were sharing your story, as you can hear Farah say, she took some space to be still. She fed her spirit, right? She was listening to things. These are things I tell people because, sometimes, and we're just talking about a book, but for anything in life, I think sometimes we allow financial barriers to stop us because the way things are marketed is that you need don't get me wrong, money's helpful for but if you don't have it, I don't want people to get stuck in their barriers. On
Mm.
YouTube, I tell people I listen to Les Brown every morning when I wake up in the morning to go to the gym and I don't feel like it. He'd be like, what are you doing? Like, he screams a lot when he be talking, so I'd be like, get up, Celeste. Right? Like, I need that. It's like me and Farah haven't arrived, we still got to do the work. But we make it a lifestyle, like making it a lifestyle, I think is not think I know it's important. And that
Mm.
just happens to be the voice. I used to listen to motivational videos and Les Brown's voice stood out. And for somebody else, it may be something different. Like, figure out what I love hiking. Some people may love the beach and the water.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
just tell people, figure out what works for you. But making time to be still, it goes back to that stillness that allows you to get to this point, right? So
Mhm.
I appreciate you kind of sharing that because it is an international bestseller and it's doing well, but it took some like,
Oh yeah, blood, sweat, and
yeah,
tears,
yeah,
doubting yourself,
the
questioning
doubt.
if you're good, um,
Yeah, the
yeah,
doubt part is
one of the
heavy.
biggest gifts that I feel like I've gotten is from those who know me and those who don't,
Hmm.
who read the book and go, it's like you talking right at me. Like, it's like we're in the kitchen. I said, because that was
That's
one of
what's
my biggest fears. Like,
yeah,
I hate when you can't tell who the author is. Like, it could
yeah,
anybody could have written the book,
yeah.
right? And so to hear from people who grew up with me, who know me, and they just like, man,
Oh,
Vi, it's like you talking to me, like we in your kitchen. And I was
oh,
like,
that's dope.
that is wonderful. For my
Yeah,
dad to go like, you really took these really challenging topics. Like, he even
very
told me, he was like,
challenging.
I was nervous to read your book. Certain chapters I was holding my breath. And the way that you broke it down, I was like, oh wow, this was so accessible, this was so easy to read.
Yeah.
And even though it was challenging, I felt like you were supporting me. And I was like, and we're therapists, like
Wow.
this is what we do. We sit
Yeah.
with people in the uncomfortable, in the dirty, in the muck.
Mhm.
And we a line I've been saying recently, I need to write some content around it because I was like, ooh, um, people pay us to make them uncomfortable.
That's true.
If you ever really think about that, like, you're paying me to cause you discomfort.
Yeah, that's true.
But the only reason why you stay continuously paying me is because I'm creating a safe space for you to
Yeah.
go through that discomfort.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so I was like, as I write this book and the things that come up start triggering certain emotions that may
Mhm.
be uncomfortable, I want you to feel that I'm not trying to poke the bear,
Mhm.
that I'm like, same thing when like my littlest kid, we were at the pool and he skinned his knee like bad. Well, when you see the white, and I was like,
Oh,
ooh.
yeah. Ooh.
And I was like, but we can't just leave it there. We got to put some alcohol. We got to
Yeah.
clean it. It's going to sting. We got to put like the Neosporin. So just even that, we got to tend to it.
Mhm.
And it's not going to feel good even when you're tending to it, but that's what's going to help you heal. That's
Yeah.
what I wanted as I wrote this book. Like, I didn't
Oh,
want it
yeah.
to be so academic that it's like, okay,
Yeah.
we're breaking down emotional intelligence. I'm like, no, we're
Right.
going to have a conversation about it. I'm hoping it's going to make you think differently. I hope it's
Yeah.
going to make you feel differently. And at the end of reading these chapters, that you'll do different because of what you know and how you feel. And that you didn't feel like I was condemning you. That,
Right.
as believers, it's like, how we feel that God has called us is not out of condemnation, it's out of conviction, right? And that's where I feel like, especially in the D&I space, I'm like, y'all are yelling a lot.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm thinking people are just resisting because there's a lot of condemnation in how
Yeah.
it's being presented.
Yeah.
And I get the anger. I understand it. Nobody wants to be oppressed.
Right.
But is there a way that you can highlight what's going on that convicts people? Because
Mhm.
conviction brings that awareness, and you go, ooh, now let me do a 180. You've
Mm.
shown me myself. It does not feel good, but now I'm aware of it and I don't like it.
Hmm.
Let me confess where I'm wrong and move forward to do something better. And that's really what I'm trying to get people to
Ooh,
do with this book.
ooh, I owe you an offering.
We're going to exchange offerings.
Farah, this was amazing conversation. I've been doing a lot of talks with people around the workplace stuff, and it starts with leaders. I know you do a lot of corporate stuff with leaders because I think if we start at the top, it can really help. Yeah, it trickles down. So tell people how they can reach you, and obviously you can get the book on Amazon. It's on Kindle, and the book actual hard copy. I'm a Kindle person. That's why I always bitch at Kindle, but
Ah, that's cool because I'm finding more people are enjoying Kindle. I need to physically feel the book. Like I like the smell of the
but
paper.
so like if I'm like waiting somewhere, I have the Kindle on my phone too. I
Mm.
can click on it and start reading. Cause
Yeah, I mean
yeah,
it's definitely more accessible.
yeah.
Yeah, so and I'm excited that now actually it's available wherever books are sold. So if you want to go to Barnes and Noble,
Woo!
if they don't have the physical copy, you can ask for the physical copy for them to start carrying it. Because I
That's
can't wait to see pictures of people going like, "I saw your book at the bookstore," but it is available online. You can get the paperback, hard copy, or the ebook on Amazon, on Barnes and Noble, and I think Walmart and wherever books are sold. And if you
right.
want to learn more about the work that I do, my company is Working Well Daily. You can visit workingwelldaily.com. And if you want to follow, I share a lot of content on
On
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, yeah.
Yeah. And so that's Farah Harris, LCPC. Just, check me out in the search. My DMs are open. If you have any questions, I do respond. And I often will send you a voice note. So I don't
Oh,
know.
wow.
Yeah.
And,
So sometimes I'm like, let me just verbalize this.
it's easier.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you all can find it in the show notes as well. I'll have links to everything in the show notes. Show notes. Farah, thank you so much for your time, your energy. You're so amazing. I appreciate it, and I know my audience is going to get so many different gems from your conversation.